Hello everyone, my name is Haddad. I'm a Senior Research Fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute, and I'm one of the co-authors of the Global Nutrition Report, which came out last year. And I'm really pleased to be able to have the opportunity to talk to you about malnutrition in Asia. Now think about those three words, malnutrition in Asia. They're three words that you don't think will go together very easily, because we think of Asia as an incredibly dynamic, diverse, economically growing, poverty-reducing, politically influencing region that's shaping lots of global decisions around trade, aid, climate, security, financial flows. So an incredibly diverse and incredibly powerful region, and yet still plagued with malnutrition. Two types of malnutrition, in fact. The undernutrition type, which is where people are not getting enough food, care and health and water and sanitation to allow them, especially when they're very young infants, to grow properly. We see children that are much too short for their age, children who are much too light for their age. This matters because their immune systems don't develop properly, their cognitive systems don't develop properly. We know that 45% of all child deaths under the age of 5 are related in one way or another to undernutrition. We know that kids that are undernourished at a very early age will go on to earn less in the labor market because they have learned less in school. Their brains are less able to process information and attain cognitive achievements. In fact, we know that kids who are stunted at the age of 3 years old will be a third more likely to live in households that are below the poverty line. A third more likely. They'll earn about 40% less in the labor market. So they will be under-realizing their potential, their family's potential, and their nation's potential. The GDP losses from undernutrition are estimated to be about 11%. But the region is also dealing with overnutrition, things like obesity, overweight, and the associated health issues around diabetes, hypertension, and coronary heart disease. And these also have really profound economic costs in terms of absenteeism from work, presenteeism, which is when you're at work but you're not performing as well as you could be, and massive burdens placed on healthcare and insurance systems. So massive economic burdens, massive human tragedy consequences, and massive mortality and morbidity consequences. So what do we do? Well, we know what to do. There are a number of interventions that have been proven to be effective in reducing malnutrition. The problem is that the coverage rates are just incredibly low in many Asian countries. This is something also the Global Nutrition Report highlighted last year. Some countries do very well on some interventions. There are about 10 key interventions that need to be rolled out to cover at least 90% of the population that are at risk. Some countries do really well on some, and some Asian countries do really well on others, but very few countries in the region do well on all 10 of these interventions. And now it is really important they do well, because it will reduce malnutrition by increasing the coverage of these interventions. In fact, the effectiveness is so large that every dollar spent in scaling up these interventions will yield $16 in return. That's for every dollar you invest in these interventions, scaling them up, you get $16 back. And that's because of the kids, when they're adults, are earning a lot more in the labor market. So what do we need to do to get this scaling up to happen? Well, I believe that the Asian governments are committed to malnutrition reduction, but they have lots of demands on their time. They have lots of things distracting their attention away from this issue. Nutrition doesn't have many sectoral champions. It's not a sector like health or education or agriculture. It requires champions who can work across borders, who can see the bigger picture, who can make the alliances, who can make the persuasive arguments. And so we as civil society and as businesses and as research institutes and as NGOs, we need to get government's attention focused on this issue. They're easily distracted, they've got lots of priorities. How can we make this their number one priority? And that's what's so great about One Goal's campaign. It's so original, it's persuasive, it reaches out to a very wide range of people that probably wouldn't think about nutrition very often. So I really applaud what they're doing, and I would urge you to become nutrition champions and highlight to your governments and to your leaders throughout society the costs of malnutrition, both human and economic, but also the fact that we can do something about it and that it's a fantastically effective investment that works. Finally, I want to just say something about Australia's role, because you're in Australia. Australia is also was also the host of the G20 last year, and Australia also has a big malnutrition problem itself, with very high levels of overweight and obesity. No country in the world is free from malnutrition. This is one of the big messages of the Global Nutrition Report. And I think Australia has a role beyond its own malnutrition issues, which is to be a regional focal point for Southeast Asia and Asia, perhaps more broadly, because not only can it serve as a knowledge hub for issues around malnutrition, it can also serve as a way of listening to other countries in the region and showing the value of listening, because all countries are having to deal with these issues. It's not unique to any one country. So they all need to share the problems they have, and they all need to vitally share the information and the solutions that they have. So I would urge Australia to step up more than it has done to date and be a big leader in the fight against malnutrition in its own country, in Southeast Asia, and working with other regional powers within Asia to banish malnutrition forever. It can be done. It will be done by 2030, I believe, but not unless people like you step up for nutrition and become nutrition champions and tell your governments why they need to do something and what they can do. Thank you very much.